Am I the a-hole for cutting my dad off because he chose his stepdaughter over me? When I think back on my teenage years, one of the most vivid memories isn't of school or friends or hobbies. It's of my parents fighting. It was constant. In a single week, at least 3 days were guaranteed to be filled with raised voices, slammed doors, and tense silences afterward. It wasn't just marital disagreements. It was the kind of fighting where you could feel the hostility vibrating through the walls, where dinner time meant staring at your plate because making eye contact might get you dragged into the crossfire. By the time I was 14, the marriage had disintegrated to the point where divorce was inevitable. My mom finally made the decision to go to a lawyer. You'd think my dad might have been angry at her or at the situation, but instead, he found a way to pin it on me. I still remember the day he looked at me, barely a teenager, and said, "If you had just stopped your mom from going to the lawyers, none of this would have happened." I was 12 or 13, a child, and somehow, in his eyes, I was responsible for keeping a failing marriage alive. That moment burned itself into my brain. After the divorce, my mom and I had to move into my grandmother's place temporarily while she found a new home for us. That period was already stressful. We were cramped into a small space, trying to rebuild our lives from scratch. But my dad kept showing up uninvited every couple of days. No call, no warning, just there. Sometimes he'd stay for hours, lingering in the living room as if he still lived there, sometimes making snide remarks about the divorce. I don't know if he was trying to intimidate my mom or just couldn't let go, but it made me dread every knock on the door. Eventually, when Mom and I moved into our own place, the visit stopped, but the sense that he might show up out of nowhere stuck with me for a while. A few years passed and life moved forward. By 19, I was preparing to go overseas for my education, a dream I had worked hard for. Around that time, my dad had remarried. Through his new marriage, he gained a stepdaughter who was about 15 years old in 2024. She wasn't his biological child, but it became crystal clear pretty quickly that she was his priority now. When the topic of my overseas education came up, my mom asked him to help with the costs. She wasn't asking him to cover everything, just a portion. That's when things turned ugly. First, he flat out told me I shouldn't even go. His argument? I should just start working instead of wasting money on more school. He made it sound like my education was a luxury, not an investment in my future. My mom pushed back hard, reminding him that higher education would open doors for me. Then I found out the truth. He was already paying for his stepdaughter's education. And because she was considered an international student where we lived, her tuition fees were even higher. When I asked him why he couldn't help me, his excuse was that he was financially tight because of her schooling. It didn't end there. His entire side of the family, my uncles, my aunties, jumped in to defend him. I was hit with lines like, "Why should your dad have to pay for your education when your parents are divorced?" As if the divorce had somehow absolved him of any responsibility toward me. I felt like I was in an alternate reality. Here I was, his actual daughter, being told I didn't deserve help, while he poured resources into someone else's child. Even after all of this, I still tried to keep some contact. That year, we went to the temple together to pay respects to our ancestors. I thought maybe we could just get through the day peacefully. But while we were waiting around, my dad suddenly turned on me. Out of nowhere, he started firing questions like bullets. "Why should I pay for your education? Why do you always bring up money every time we meet?" His tone was sharp, each word heavy with accusation. Before I knew it, my uncles and aunties had joined in. I was surrounded by adults, all older, louder, and more forceful than me. It felt like the walls were closing in. Everywhere I turned, someone was demanding I justify myself, shaming me for wanting financial support for school. I could feel my face burning, my throat tightening. I was just 19, standing in a sacred space meant for reflection and respect, being treated like I was greedy and ungrateful. I broke. I ran. I left the temple, barely able to breathe, and went straight home. When I told my mom what happened, I could barely get the words out through the tears. I don't think I've ever felt so small and so alone. Even now, years later, I can still feel that knot in my chest when I think about it. Eventually, after months of arguments and after my mom and I revised the shared custody agreement, my dad did end up paying less than half of my school fees. But it came with a caveat. He said he hadn't wanted to pay in the first place because I didn't fulfill my side of the agreement by not visiting him often enough. As if love and time could be used as bargaining chips for my education. 7 years have passed. I'm 26 now, my education is complete, and I've built a career for myself. I've kept contact with him to a minimum. From what I've heard, his stepdaughter no longer studies in my hometown because of the high tuition costs, but I don't know the full story. Recently, he's been sending me TikToks about how children owe their parents and how kids should always be filial. Every time one pops up on my phone, I feel this mix of disbelief and anger. So, am I the a-hole for cutting my dad off? Edit. My dad did pay for my school fees eventually, less than 50%, but it was after a few months of fighting with him and his family. My mom and I had to edit the terms and conditions of the shared custody agreement. He said that because I did not fulfill my side of the agreement and not visited him often, which is why he did not want to fund my studies initially.